all that was like an hour of okay, sure, he sprinkled in a couple of people quote unquote disagreeing with him, fine, whatever. Um, but all it was just an hour of people railing against non-binary people and people who they felt weren't trans, whatever that means.
You thought that those were people
And
railing against people who were non-binary?
well, that's what a lot of them were talking about. Yeah, they're like, oh, these fake trans people, non-binary people, they don't understand our experiences. They don't have our oppression. Oh my God, they make it so hard to be trans. I'm like,
So you have allowed me to do so.
Hello. Damn, I didn't actually expect to get in. What's up?
Yes, I've just basically brought you all in because you were kind of sat here just chilling. And yeah, I'm interested to hear what people's takes are. So I guess we can go around one by one and give some takes. So, Dan the Step, what's your take on the manifesto?
I think it's well thought out and at least well done. I don't exactly agree with all the takes there, but I do think there are at least a preface to at least criticism that should be at least mentioned and talked about throughout the whole point when he talks about Ian.
Okay. By the way, feel free to cam up if you want. Anyone here. You don't have to. No, it's optional. There we go. Dario.
I will if you will.
Oh. Okay, so I agree with every single word in the manifesto. Okay, every single word. I'm not gonna be a pussy. I'm not gonna say, "Oh, I don't agree with everything," and then not specify what I don't agree with. Okay, every single word. No.
But that does that mean that you don't even have a nuanced take about this if you just say
Wait.
I agree with every
Wait. Why do you need a nuanced take? Do you think you need a nuanced take on everything?
Okay, well, slow down. Let's give everyone a chance
do you
first.
have a
Wait, Dr. Jellicle, go on. What do you reckon?
Wait? I didn't even finish my thought, Chud.
You don't need to. You said you agree with every word.
Exactly. You agree with everyone. Everyone already knows your thoughts. It's the manifesto.
I was just about to read some trans emails. Chill, okay? Let me just read some. Go on.
Okay, can I talk now? Is that
Yes,
okay,
you may,
Dario?
yes. Go
on. Yeah, I don't think anything really new was said in this manifesto. I think like you mentioned earlier, it was kind of just compiling it all into one place in one document. And when you put it all, maybe like individually, different dramas come up here and there, but like when you look back at everything and you put it all together, you kind of are like, okay, so this is like the overarching theme between Destiny's, maybe like his career and his relationship with these different people and how they engage in the space. And like maybe people aren't as clean and angelic as they'd like to think they are.
Interesting. Okay. Red Penny.
I think. Well, I was speaking with Rysam about it slightly last night in terms of content. He could have, done it slightly differently. Maybe staggered it slightly because that fucking 7-hour slog just, I think, killed a lot of people's interest or even just how much they agreed with him. And as we all know, it was good to. I think it was good to hear valid trans experience. I'd argue that probably like 95% of them were, real. I'm sure there was 5% of DDJs who just wanted to troll or say shit that they didn't actually have on. And I think that it's it'd be interesting to see if Bosch can get off his ass and bring 30 or 35 non-binary experiences to fight back with. But honestly, I think Bosch is just going to probably just address it in like a 1 or 2 minute long talk about it. And in terms of content, I think it'll just be maybe a panel to people just arguing whether his trans takes are actually transphobic or not.
Okay, Supreme.
Well, you know me. I'm gonna have a lot to say about it, so I can wait. I can wait till the end.
Okay, no problem. Viscose Writer 4.
Hey, what's up? My opinion on the manifesto is like I agree with like 99.99% of stuff in there. I think it dragged on, especially with with all the email reading. But especially since I'm pretty sure he already read those emails like a month ago when the whole trans drama was going on. But like other than that, like I agree with it. My only concern is that like since he's been banned from Twitch and all that, it's gonna kind of fall on deaf ears. Like no one's gonna really, give a shit. Uh, but yeah, other than that, like I agree. I never thought we'd see the day where we'd actually get the manifesto. Like I thought he would always keep putting it off for another week. But yeah, that's my thoughts.
Okay,
Is my mic
so-
better? Sorry, I just wanted to adjust my
Yes.
volume there. Okay, cool.
Oh well, you know me. I'm gonna have a lot to say about it, so I can go. I'm joking. My broad opinion is that I guess I don't really have any problems. I didn't watch the VOS section. I broadly agree with Destiny's opinions on VOS. I'm sure there's like some minor disagreements, but specifically about the trans section, Destiny has a lot of understandable feelings that come from understandable places, but that then are taken then he takes like prescriptive positions on that are like a little bit further than I would prescribe.
Okay, right. Have at it. Who's got a take? Who wants to throw something out there?
Can I have a serious point instead of my meme point?
Yes,
Is that
go
allowed?
on.
Okay. I think the most damning part of the manifesto, and I don't think a lot of people necessarily speak about this. So it seems like people mostly watch the first part with the trans emails, I guess, and then tuned out. But I feel like the manifesto somehow perfectly describes like the team sports and like the hypocrisy of like the entire like Twitch
The
politics space.
tribalism.
Exactly. And I feel like and honestly, like I know she's a mutual friend of ours, Chud, but like I think the best description was like the Demon Mama clips and everything,
Welcome
where
to
like
Chud Nation.
literally it's
Team
like
Strike issued a
she's
tier
reading
1
up
sub
and
to
being like,
Lefties.
oh, Vermin didn't call Destiny a rapist at all, and then 2 minutes later a person brings up, oh, she called him Rapestiny all night long, and then Demon Mama was just like, I don't care, doesn't matter. It's like what's the point? Like literal evidence. Like no matter what kind of evidence you have, like people aren't gonna change their minds because of like the tribalism, right? And like that's
Yeah, I agree
everything
with
that
that, yeah.
matters. So there's basically two ways that I can see this going down. Either A, they don't realize they're doing the tribalism, and therefore maybe because the manifesto is so like everything is put together in like a rather succinct way with like all the clips and like all the sources and everything, then maybe they're gonna see it and maybe they're gonna change a little bit or acknowledge at least like that's what's happening. Or B, they realize they're doing it and they're basically not gonna care and dismiss everything and say, oh, he's just being spite driven or whatever, and then we're back to normal and nothing happened. Yep.
All right. Let me unleash the barrels, okay? Both barrels.
Hit
And
me.
due to this panel, what was
Release
done
your
to Shin...
shotgun.
Oh, never mind.
You just want to get rid
That
of
was
some
where
of
you're
it,
going.
Supreme.
Well, never mind. Don't worry about that. Okay. First off, I thought the first part, okay, I think this should have been broken up into 3. I honestly think he could have written this into separate manifestos. While I was listening to it, I felt like he maybe could have benefited from like having each section be about each person, but I see how that could have fallen short too, because some of that stuff would have been like a little too late, you know what I mean? Like trying to brush up on the Bad Bunny stuff 3 or 4 years later, or 2 or 3 years later, they don't have any contact anymore. It kind of would have seemed a little bit spiteful or something like that. So fitting that neatly into, like, here are some things I've been accused of. This document seemed mostly self-defensive. I think in that way it was probably a lot different than the rest of us expected. I think a lot of us expected this to be another Bob 7 situation where it would just be Destiny, just, you know what I mean? Like fucking going full bore, red laser, blue laser, just completely sinking the Voss ship. And, all of the people that have come for his neck over the years, but that wasn't what it was. It seemed to be him largely just defending himself and just trying to get control of the narrative that he lost control of over the years, right? That like his detractors or people that have been really unfair to him over the years have really succeeded in, controlling the narrative, wrangling the narrative, and making him out to be like a really terrible person. A lot of accusations of things that he really never did, just entering the sort of Twitter zeitgeist and people just taking for granted and accepting. So yeah, I don't know. The manifesto, by and large, was just largely self-defensive on Destiny's part. And to that end, it seems like, it wasn't what we expected. It also probably wasn't. We probably weren't the audience. It was one of those things where after the first chapter, if you've followed Destiny, if you've been a fan of the guy and watched his content over the years, you're going to be familiar with basically everything. So it seems like this is a manifesto, especially near the end, the Vosh stuff. I think we all expected that this would be, like him trying to sink Vosh's battleship, when really it was just him, it seems like, just defending against claims that Vosh had made about him, and that he was speaking directly to maybe Vosh's audience. You may have heard these things about me. Here's the truth, or something like that.
If I remember correctly, he actually said on one of his streams that like in this manifesto, his like goal was to speak to like the other side who like don't like him. If I remember correctly, I don't remember which stream it was, but
I think I agree with that, Supreme. That was also my like halfway through. Like that's what I felt. And like one of my friends who wasn't watching asked me like, "Oh, what kind of drama or whatever came up in the manifesto?" And I was like, it seems like it was just like Destiny kind of like basically defending himself on all his personal grievances over the years, like the biggest ones, and basically just presenting like his side and like everything gathered together kind of way. And yeah, like you said, like, I mean, nothing new for people watching, but
Yeah, and
for
you
the
mentioned the
community.
trans emails, and like you're kind of memeing about that a little bit, but honest to God, that was my favorite part of it.
Yeah,
I mean, it
I
was
agree actually. Yeah,
what?
because that was
Okay.
the only part where I actually got something new out of it, right? And like, and I actually I enjoyed like that perspective, and I felt like, as you said, like I felt that that could have been like a separate like event, like just talking about like all of the trans arguments and everything like in one video, and then having like a debate around that, because I felt like there was a bit um yeah, it didn't really fit with the rest, but I really enjoyed that, and I actually think that's like a perspective that isn't talked about a lot on Twitch, and I think it should have um more time.
It doesn't seem like it fit with the rest of the content of the manifesto, but I also really appreciate that he basically got to market the manifesto, something that would draw like a huge audience, and then he got to give a voice to a lot of those people in a way. If he was just like, "Hey guys, I'm going to read all these emails from trans people," and like a personal account on their behalf, like personal testimony of like how they struggle with it, what their life is like, probably not that many people would have showed up to it. So I
Yeah,
guess
for
to
sure.
that end, it was like really effective for like granting a microphone to like the people that had granted their testimony or whatever. And also, I
That
think it
is
was
the.
just. Oh, go ahead.
I'd just say that is the one argument against breaking it up in terms of he did draw all of the eyes because it was a big event. If it was dragged out into 2 or 3 different segments, it would have dissipated the number of people who actually engaged with seeing it, even if it did become a chore by the end of it.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
not like the trans manifesto. It's not like the Vosh manifesto. It is the manifesto. You know what I'm saying? This is the big one.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, like, do we think that that he will succeed with this manifesto though? Because I can't really say if he succeeded in this unless we could look at it maybe 2 months from now.
What do you think his goal was, then?
I think he was trying to address basically everything that his enemies were talking about him.
Yeah, I guess part of it was him going, I do engage in this drama, but I categorically don't act in the same way that the other people do. I don't tell lies about people like everyone
Oh, I,
else
I
does
actually
about him.
I actually don't think anything's gonna change, and the reason why it's very simple, and the reason why is because it hasn't changed so far, and this isn't the first time people have brought up like the whole team sports and everything, and the reason why it exists is because it makes a few people a lot of money. And I think it's going to keep making people a lot of money because there's a financial incentive to pretend like you're not doing team sports and pretend like you're just being like objective,
Fair
and the
and
other side is
critical.
just
Yeah.
exactly like there's a lot of money to be made there. And B, your audience is not gonna like that. Like if you're granting, like, if at this point I think if Vosh is gonna grant Destiny anything, like if you read Vosh's subreddit and if you read like Vosh's chat and everything, like it's all people who are like, oh, Destiny is coping, he's just spite driven, he's just schizo posting, like it's a schizo, and like all of, like, nobody's gonna take it serious, like nobody, because they don't have any incentive to do so. And like, why would Vosh do that? Like it's just gonna, yeah, like there's nothing to gain except, I guess, intellectual honesty.
To some degree,
Yeah.
it feels like he prepared for that or tried to get ahead of that by making the case that this is already what Vosh does. It's going to be like he already has a track record of just ignoring things that are inconvenient for him to confront, or something that he already has a pattern of saying like, "Oh, just look for yourself, look at the evidence," but then he actually never shows it, and so that he can get away scot free with just making things up, and then that just becomes the narrative moving forward because nobody is going to go through the effort of like looking up the clips and understanding them in context, or like trying to understand things from Destiny's perspective or something like that. So like if Vosh does that, which I think we would expect him to do.
Yeah, and to be fair to Vosh, I don't think this is like unique to Vosh. I think Vosh is probably the best one at like trying to get ahead of the narrative. Like he's very good in that way. Like intelligent and like I guess I would say socially intelligent maybe. So like I don't think it's just Vosh. I think most people do that, but what I'm unsure about is whether or not they do it consciously or unconsciously. Does that make sense?
Wait,
Like do they know that's what they're doing, or
I have something to say. Hold on, Rajani. I just want to say the reason that nothing will ever change is because all these fans and stuff of these people that Destiny talked about in the manifesto are gonna do shit that this thing that Chud does, where they say, "Oh, I disavow this thing. I disavow this thing. That thing was bad, but it doesn't make them a bad person, and I'm still gonna be a fan of them." So everyone's gonna see all this crazy shit that Keffels did or that Vosh did, and they're gonna be like, "Yeah, that stuff was bad, but I still love them, and I'm still a big fan of them."
I don't have a
people are never
problem
gonna
with
get
that.
away, and they're gonna keep getting away with the same shit.
I don't know. I don't have a problem if everybody just agreed and recognized that the lies were lies, and like I would have no desire for Vosh's fans to throw Vosh away or Keffel's fans to throw Keffels away or whatever.
Yeah.
As long as like
I
they
agree.
can recognize that the mistakes were mistakes and that the lies were lies or
Nah,
something like that.
I
I understand
think
what
at
you're
some
saying though.
point,
I understand what you're saying. They're going to keep growing and they're going to keep spreading the lies, and there's not going to be that much effort from like anybody that does try to see some like objective truth in this to make sure that everybody else in the community sees it the same way or whatever.
I think at some point you have to say bad people are bad people and they shouldn't have fans. So, I mean, obviously people will be fans of them, but
Yeah, but the thing is, what does that even do? That's literally just virtue signaling, isn't it? Because it doesn't have any material impact on what happens.
I mean, I think if Keffels didn't have that kind of fan base, then she wouldn't have had the impact on Destiny that she did. No,
But it could be argued that a lot of
Yeah,
Keffels
but
fan base-
You want to
saying
kill
that-
Keffels and her fans.
But you saying that doesn't change
in a video.
anything. Okay, you've just said that. How many fans has Keffels lost now? Like, it doesn't change anything.
I think
I mean,
the
I'm
biggest
just
thing-
pointing out the reason that these things won't change because I haven't heard anyone say that yet.
Well, it
I
can
think
though,
DK was
Chud.
expressing frustration with the kind of rationalization that takes place in Vosh and Keppel's fan bases for like reasons that they're still going to be fans of their favorite content creator.
I think we have to be fair and see this both ways. Like, on the one hand, we have to recognize a content creator's capacity to recognize their own mistakes and to make amends for them and reconcile or whatever, right? Like, that's going to be really, really difficult when you have people that have like launched really vicious attacks at each other and like things are largely ego driven, and that's going to be the biggest barrier to cross. I think that's the case with Keffels, and it's probably the case with Vosh. It's just going to be too much for Vosh's ego, I think, to be like, you know what, I have been unfair here, and here. I have run away with the narrative a little bit, and I also just think that Vosh is actually really intentional about like controlling the narrative and like lying to people for to control the narrative. He's been pretty forward about that being his MO for like a decade now. I think Doomer politics is like illustrated and established that pretty well. That being said, like we also have to recognize that you can blow up somebody's ship, Chud. Look what happened to Glorious
Chud Nation.
Arcadum. Look what happened to Bob Seven. Like, you can erase people from the internet if they do
Wait.
something egregious.
I mean,
and-
I don't know
and-
about the Bob Seven stuff, but Arcadum like pretty much raped someone. I mean, that's a different
someone? Yeah.
standard.
That's
But
much
the point
different.
is
Bob Seven
that,
was also accused of at least sexually harassing.
okay, Arcadum
Right.
didn't rape, as far as I know. I don't think Arcadum raped anybody.
No, he
But,
did. He did.
Oh,
Remember
you're
he-
right. You're right. There
Yeah.
was that situation where
wasn't that with the girl? And
Yeah, he went around.
that was her.
he went
That was
around
her
the house.
testimony anyway. That was her.
Yeah, that
testimony.
was a testimony. He's accused of rape.
Allegedly.
Right.
Yes.
Sorry, allegedly.
There were also
Lawyers.
recordings, and those recordings
But
did a hell of a lot.
The recordings
Other
were very
sexual
damning as
harassers
well.
are available.
Sexual
didn't he-
misconduct. Sexual misconduct.
But I'm
There was-
saying,
we were recording.
that's way worse than something than say what Keffels has done,
Okay.
right?
Like,
It's all
the
different
point
access,
is,
yeah.
hold on. The point is, I don't know if it really depends. I think like accusing
on how you-
somebody falsely of rape is pretty fucking bad too, especially if it's just out of spite and just to like try to turn everybody against them. My point is just that like if you get people to agree on a certain reality, it can have repercussions on a content creator's future in the industry. That's for sure.
I agree.
Yeah.
I think that people are very willing to take a sort of people are very willing to selectively take a sticks and stones attitude. Like, oh well, they just said that you raped someone, but then like if they're like being hurt, they're like, oh, you can't say that, right?
Does it? I mean, I'm just curious. Do you have other examples of that did happen recently? Because the first thing that comes up for me is stuff with Hans of Ikea, with how Vosh basically kind of destroyed his career.
Wait, what?
What?
Really?
How did Vosh
What?
destroy his career?
No. I mean, it just. Well, I mean, he lost a lot of his goodwill with a lot of his fans.
Can,
What?
can
Yeah,
you be
what was this
specific?
drama?
Okay, no disrespect to Hans, but I think we should confine this to like creators that have had like an actual platform.
Yeah,
Okay.
creators,
Okay.
creators
Disrespect
that
to Hans,
are.
but-
Yeah, let's not talk about streamers who aren't on the platform anymore.
I think Greek God X is another example. Like if you look at that guy, he's like fallen off really hard, and it's because like enough of the public has recognized he's said enough ugly things, or people that we agree on a certain reality that he's like going schizo or something like that, and it's had a material impact on his reach, his influence, and how people interpret him and stuff like that.
One
I
could
think
argue that the
genuinely-
laziness is actually more detrimental to his career, though, in terms of I
I
don't know
think
if he actually streams more regularly than brief spurts. Of,
Okay, some Twitch streamers leave for 2 years. Like who's that guy, the WoW player, Mitch Jones? He can leave for like a year or two, and then come back, and his first stream he has 15,000 viewers again, same as he left with. So like I don't know, these things are kind of difficult to measure. What we're like, it seems like there was some contention just now over whether or not there's value in trying to establish that a certain content creator is guilty of some impropriety, if they've been dishonest, if they've lied about things, like the extent to which they have, whether or not you can demonstrate they have, so on and so forth, right?
I
Like
think
DK, you came in and
yes.
said that there's no value in this, and like
Supreme, what I wonder is if it depends on the community that they have, right? So what I'm afraid of and what I fear is the reason why it isn't going to change anything in this case specifically is because of these specific communities that have been made around this, where if you if you're a fan of Greek God X, right? He's like an entertainment streamer, very obviously, like just an entertainment streamer, and all he does is like crazy, whatever meme stuff and stuff like that, right? He doesn't really have a cult in the same way, a cult of personality in that way. Like he's just an entertainer. But I feel like for many of these politics streamers, well, they might
got
not
a whole
say
ideological brand. I understand.
well, exactly, right. So if you're suddenly turning against Keffels, you're not just being like, oh, Keffels fucked up. Like I don't think like she's a good person. I don't want to follow her anymore. You're transphobic, right? Or like you become anti-left. You're moving to the right, right? Like you're changing your positions. That's like they associate the person personally with the political brand or like the ideology. And that's a lot of the issue that I see in this space specifically is that a lot of people will say, oh, I don't like Destiny because I disagree with a lot of his takes or I disagree with a lot of the issues. But in reality, and I think the manifesto showed this very well, is that most of the people just have personal strifes with Destiny. And then they just supplement the political stuff on top of that to make it seem like they're not schizo posting, basically.
Okay, let me just ask real quick, what are we contending over?
I don't think we disagree with much. I just think we're talking about it.
There was something I disagreed with. So that's why I started making arguments, because I disagreed with DK saying that like at some point you actually just have to sink a content creator ship. There's no point like getting this narrative out if it's not to like completely destroy them or something like that.
I think that it's possible to turn a person, or maybe not turn a person's fan base against them, but I think that ultimately all of this is like, we say like, how come it isn't enough to catch fortune like this lie or that lie or whatever? And the reason is because people don't care. They're consuming entertainment product, and as long as that's aesthetically appealing to them, they're going to be consuming it. And I think that some of the success of Doom of Politics videos is pointing out patterns in Vorsh's content that make it less aesthetically appealing when you see them again.
Right, like cause you to lose faith in that creator.
Yeah, well, not even like lose faith in their moral character or anything like that. Just be like, oh, well, yeah, you're right. I don't have a taste for this anymore, right? Like my aesthetic, like when I watch Vorsh like rail against cops, now I'm like, yeah, I don't like that.
Based. No, that's based actually.
Right, Jellicle,
tuned
listen, why are you so fucking quiet? You always fucking talking about how much you fucking hate Destiny, and now you're here with your fucking tail between your legs. Come on, speak up.
Well, you guys are not really talking about Destiny. You're just talking about random people. I mean,
we're talking about the manifesto. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, the manifesto, fine, sure. Like he pointed out bad things that people have done, and okay, I can agree that those things were bad. I'm not going to just sit here and defend them. Um, what now?
So I think, well, it sounds like the question is, the whole point of that manifesto was for him to try to like retake control of reality and the truth of what he has or has not done. And if you recognize that like all of those criticisms are not founded in truth, um, I mean, if that's the case, then like, what's your beef?
My beef with Destiny?
Sure.
I don't know. I think he's just a dickhead and he's obnoxious, and the whole trans section was ass, garbage, useless.
Damn, you thought it was ass garbage useless? How come?
Well,
do you hate trans people, Dr. Gels?
Oh,
not a
fuck
fan
off, Dario.
personally.
Stop ruining the conversation with your bullshit.
No, Dario's talking about real trans people.
Exactly.
Well, hold on. Let's not go there. But I actually,
I thought it was
Let's be
obvious.
serious.
I'm sorry.
I thought that was a really valuable part of the manifesto, and it's like a valuable part of the conversation that people have not been
The
having.
emails?
Yeah,
No, I thought that was completely useless and didn't add
you thought
much
it
of
was
anything.
completely useless and didn't add much of anything.
I don't think
well,
it's
hang on.
useless, but
Hold on, allow me. Is that because you thought that everything that was said in those emails is like we can all take for granted and is common knowledge and are just obvious?
Well,
or
yeah, we know that these perspectives exist because I mean, all that was is like an hour of okay, sure, he sprinkled in a couple of people quote unquote disagreeing with him, fine, whatever. But all it was just an hour of people railing against non-binary people and people who they felt weren't trans, whatever that means.
you thought that those were
And
people railing against people who were non-binary?
well, that's what a lot of them were talking about. Yeah, they're like, oh, these fake trans people, non-binary people, they don't understand our experiences. They don't have our oppression. Oh my God, they make it so hard to be trans. I'm like,
Yeah.
okay,
We
I
got
don't care.
totally
Also,
different things. We got
really,
totally
really
different
quick,
things.
I don't think that everyone knows this position. Also, I think there are a lot of people and fans of these like super lefty communities that haven't heard these kinds of positions before. Just real quick.
Okay.
I don't know if I agree with that. I think we are all. I think we can all understand that the people that Destiny like read the emails of, like we understand this position. I don't think we like. I don't know.
I mean,
Does
not
anyone on this
I-
panel not know that these people
us,
exist?
yes, but I disagree that people on the super left have heard these kinds of positions in like a fair way.
Okay, wait. So I think
Um,
there's a disconnect between what we think the point of the emails was, right? So like the way that I understand it and the way that I read the emails, I wasn't reading it as an attack on like non-binary people, and like even some of the emails made it explicitly to say that it wasn't an attack, right? So I think the point of the emails and the entire section is to ask some very valid questions in terms of like what is like a common identification between like certain types of trans people and whether or not it makes sense to categorize all of them as just under the wide trans umbrella, or maybe there should be more obvious distinctions between like certain types of trans people, not saying that they aren't trans necessarily or like that they're invalid, but just that they don't necessarily share the same kinds of experiences and thus
was
don't need the same kinds of spaces
was
to share those.
okay,
was
that's
the
fine
section
and
not about
everything.
gatekeeping the term trans? Wasn't it like the broad?
What is it?
Wasn't the section about gatekeeping the term trans? Wasn't that like the chapter title?
Well,
Yeah.
well, but do you okay, but what was the point trying to be made? Can you repeat it to me just so I understand if we're on the same page?
Oh no, I'm relying on Dr. Jellicle here. I was I was on a date with my girlfriend when the Destiny thing was happening.
Okay.
I'm trying. I'm gleaning off of context clues and what I can read right now.
So
You
you
just had
just wanted
to
to say the
slip it in
headline and
that the virgins in chat need to be jealous of you,
That's why
right? That?
I genuinely asked the question. I said,
no, it's fine. It's fine. Doctor,
I said, wasn't the point that they were gatekeeping the term trans?
sure. So I would say yes. So the title of the section was that. I agree, right? But the point wasn't to gatekeep it in the sense of, oh, they're not really real trans people, or like they shouldn't be able to like call themselves non-binary or whatever. I don't think anybody agrees with that. I think the point is just to say that there are different types of trans people, right? And I think that the people in these communities specifically, or the people who are writing these emails, are finding a hard time to find common ground with people who actually have similar experiences with them, and the only people they're finding is people who have radically different experiences than them, trying to sort of take over these spaces, so to say, that were created specifically for these people.
I'm sorry. So you're saying that these trans people are having issues finding other trans people?
No.
Well,
Here, let me break this down a little bit. I remember the exact debate that the trans Discord died for me, and I didn't want to talk about it anymore on my channel. It's when Rem and Demon Mama arrived at brand new, fresh, cutting edge perspectives on considerations we should make about trans people. Demon Mama saying you have to recognize anybody that self identifies as a woman as a woman. That's what the definition is. And Rem saying, no, there's got to be some like internal experience or something like that. Otherwise, like we can't recognize that suffering under gender dysphoria exists if we don't recognize that there's like some internal experience or something like that. And both of them were calling each other transphobic. So we've got these like fresh, new, cutting edge perspectives. And the only thing that can be agreed on is that everybody's hateful and that nobody cares about trans people the correct way. It seems like a big part of this movement and why we care about trans people is like predicated on the suicide rate, right? The fact that there are some people who experience gender dysphoria that is so severe that even when a person passes to the maximal degree, even when all the factors are right and somebody has the most ideal, whatever, genetic predisposition, whatever, to have the most ideal trans experience, that their gender dysphoria is so bad that they still consider suicide. They still like makes them so uncomfortable. It's like a horrible, horrible experience. And the same people, or at the very least, these emails, I think by and large, came from people with this experience that were also reporting that they felt that they were largely alienated from the movement that they thought was kind of supposed to be about them. And the movement was getting away from them and seemed to be full of people that were adopting this new culture of people that were sort of like trying out gender for fun. And, like Chud mentioned earlier about people who take further efforts. I don't think it's about as much people taking further efforts, although that's something that we can sort of naturally expect when it comes to the degree to which a person suffers from gender dysphoria and how terrible like that experience may be for those individuals. Like that's what the consideration, is not so much the efforts they take, because they're, like we can only, some people just may have other things that make them not take as much efforts to pursue to ameliorate their, their gender dysphoria, even if it's really, really severe. So these emails, I think, seem to just be from people who can claim that they suffer really, really badly from gender dysphoria. And they're saying that this movement is running away from them and that Destiny is the best person that they've heard speak on their behalf. Now, whether you think that's like aggrandizing to Destiny or not, like I think to say that it didn't add anything or that it was completely useless, like who do you think comes at the expense of, Dr. Jellicle? Do you think that comes at the expense of Destiny, or people that are saying we suffer from this really bad, we feel kind of alienated from the movement, and that actually these people are fucking things up for us and like actually like putting a magnifying glass over us, and we're just going to suffer even more? Like who do you think bears the expense of that more, to say that it was useless? There was no point in hearing these people out.
The viewers? I don't know. What do you mean?
Did you listen to what he said?
Did you listen, man? I don't know.
Well, I mean, I'm not saying their perspectives were useless. I'm saying like reading it in the manifesto and the way he did was useless.
But you said all of them.
Where he just said the words. He just read the emails. He just said the words that were in the emails.
Okay.
Right, but putting them in a manifesto does like characterize that reading as like evidence of your. No. I'm not saying that it. I'm not saying that it definitely all was. But if you put something in something called a manifesto, does it not characterize that as like evidencing your positions?
Well, it'll be interesting to see what happens, because there will be people who want to talk to him about his manifesto and how he responds to the other side of the argument. Because I think this fundamentally comes down to the two sort of almost conflicting routes to trans acceptance. You have some people who want to go the whole hog. They want gender abolition or gender absurdism. Strip all those social norms away because they're damaging to individuals.
Not necessarily strip them away. It just seems like there's a lot of reduction that happens when it comes to like trans people as we apply the term, and like a lot of things get reductively applied, like something like the suicide rate. Like, do people think the 41% suicide rate applies to like people who are cat girls on the weekend or something like that? Like
that's kind of true, yeah. Not true that the suicide rate applies. I'm agreeing with you. Sorry.
I was trying to say-
Well, I think the truth is like, you know, there is this discontent amongst certain people in the trans community of like, for example, if you're not a turbo cat girl communist and you're trans, you're not doing it right. And there's
that's just true though.
And it's almost like there's this gatekeeping that goes the other way as well. That if you aren't a full-on communist trans person, you know, you aren't truly part of the sort of tribe, which I think also adds to the discontent.
That's the problem because it's too like
Chud's on the mark on
combating. It's two combating perspectives because that side thinks that if you're not outwardly saying, "Hey, I'm trans. This is like this, that," it's a bad thing. When the other side is saying, like, "I don't want to be trans. I just want to, you know, be a woman or a man or whatever."
Well, you get into a dilemma in terms of, you know, if you're an internet personality and you are outwardly trans, people are going to want to ask about it. Whereas if you're, say, non-binary, you know, if you just like, say, Rhizome or Destiny even, you know, but Destiny launched himself into anyway, you can get away with just not talking about it really ever.
I think it was actually very well described by one of the emails that said that it seems that for some trans people, or like for some trans women, the goal, like the goal of them being trans, is for them to be a trans woman, while that there are other trans women where the goal for them is just to be a woman, like just to be recognized as a woman and like completely pass and be stealth in society, right? I think there's a very real difference between those two groups.
That's very interesting, and I certainly agree that is not necessarily that's something that I see, but you do see people who are very evidently like cis presenting, and you see people who are very evidently like trans female, like the who conform to like the idea of what a trans woman like is in like a certain society. But I don't necessarily think that Daria, you'd agree with me, right? That doesn't make those trans women who like conform to the idea of a trans woman, like that doesn't make them not women, right? Or less trans women, or any differently.
No, so I think that
Hello.
there's a hey Sonia. So I think in this conversation and like pretty much every single trans conversation ever, I think there's a disconnect between the words that we use and the meaning behind those words. And I think I actually recently had a debate where the entire debate was just an hour and a half just agreeing on the words that we use. And I think when we use I can tell you, right? I think all of these people are trans. And my definition of trans would just be somebody who considers themselves to be like a gender different from the one assigned at birth, right? And then under that umbrella, we can say like a whole swath of people are trans. But I don't think that's necessarily the word or the meaning behind the word trans that Destiny would use in this context, right? Like he would probably say that there's something more to being trans. And I think he also gave that definition earlier on in the manifesto, where he said that there were, I think he started out the section by saying that when he uses the word trans in this context, he's talking specifically about some kind of like inert feeling that people have of them being like, I don't know, different from society and like experiencing all of these issues growing up and like feeling like they really want to be something else. Like there's different kinds of experiences, right? So like for me, when you ask me a question, well, do you think these people are just as much trans? I can't really answer because I don't really know what you mean when you say those words because there's so many.
I was asking about, but you said yes, so but that's fine.
Daria,
Okay,
would
do you mind if I?
Daria, would you
No,
call
go,
them pygmies? Are they intentionally shitting on trans people so they get better recognition from DGG?
I didn't understand what you said. Can you?
would you
asking if
call
they're
them-
pygmies for sucking up to Destiny and DGG to
exactly.
get their support. A pygmy is basically somebody who tries to get integrated into society by effectively selling out all of their values or individuality to blend better with society.
Yeah, to like alleviate bigotry on themselves by like joining it for like everyone who is like just beyond themselves.
This is sort of the narrative around.
Sure. I don't think pick me is a useful it's a useful thing to call people.
Yeah, it's very
I don't-
reductive.
I agree
Yeah.
that it's not a useful thing to call people, but sometimes it is a useful concept
Well,
to
Yeah.
drop.
I don't even know why. Like
No.
except just demeaning them, right? Like you're basically when you call somebody a pick me, I feel like what you're doing is you're saying, I'm not gonna engage with the substance of what you said. I'm just gonna call
Exactly.
you
Yeah,
this, and
Daria,
then I don't want to discuss.
sorry,
You
I
can do
agreed
both.
that it's not a useful thing
But
to call
what
people.
if
I
there
just
is
think it's
no
a useful
substance?
concept.
What if there's
Well-
no substance to something someone says?
Well,
Like I'm trans because I'm trans, and that's it.
Well, I mean, then we can
It's-
discuss why there is no substance, right? Like there's a whole discussion there.
Right.
Yeah,
but
and I think
someone
pick
wouldn't
me
be
is
called a
just
pick-me in-
well, I think a pick me is always so reductive because there's always some kind of additional underlying reasoning or psychology behind someone's actions, and it's just dismissive of all those things. And I think
completely agree.
I think
let me say it like
99%
this.
of the time it's probably entirely mislabel as well.
Yeah, let me tell it like this. Like I think for most people, I don't think they wake up in the morning and be like, I'm gonna be a pick me today. Right? Like there's that's not a thing, right? So there's not really a point in calling them that. I don't know.
I don't know. There
I
is
just
some.
bring it up because Dr. Jekyll was
So
You can call people things they don't identify with.
Wait, let IWW speak, please. Go on, IWW.
By the way, I only bring this up because Dr. Jekyll was calling every email pick me's. So I was really surprised when he was silent during this panel. So he brought me in, and that was my question. So, Dr. Jekyll, why don't you tell us why do you think these trans people are all pick me's?
I don't think all trans people are pygmies.
No.
No, the
These
trans people in the
trans
emails.
people.
particular trans people, and yes.
Oh, the people in the email, yeah, for sure. Some of them are pygmies, definitely.
How do you
So-
know that?
Okay.
How do I know that? By the words they were saying.
Okay, hang on. The problem with this like pick me identity is that you're creating a paradigm that establishes a correct way to be like a certain thing. So
I
you're saying that
disagree.
there's a correct way to be a trans person and that these people weren't correctly being trans people. You're like reinforcing a paradigm of what the correct way to be a trans person
What?
is.
That's not what I'm saying
Yeah.
at all.
But
is
that's
exactly
the
what it's
implication
saying.
of what you're saying.
It's kind of what he's
No, it's not about them
You're-
being like they're not being the
you're
correct
saying-
trans person. It's the attitudes they're expressing towards people that they think do them some sort of disservice by harming their reputation as trans people or whatever to conservatives or whomever.
But let's talk
Um,
about what the actual impact is. The impact effectively is you dismissing their personal trans experience as less valid because they don't fit in line with your views of what is appropriate transness.
No,
Do-
I don't
do-
have an issue with their transness. I have an issue with them shitting on other people, just because they feel that they somehow do them harm in some way.
I
That
don't think
not
that
really
they were
hard to
shitting
disagree.
on those other people so much
No.
as they were
Yeah.
making the case. My takeaway was that what we've been calling trans people actually covers a wide gamut of people that potentially have like a pretty wide array of different motivations that leads them to wanting to represent themselves the way that they are. Some people want to just play with gender. It's fun, it's interesting to them, but they may not suffer like a harsh degree of gender dysphoria or something like that. It seemed like
Do you
the
think-
bulk of the emails that Destiny was reading out were people that were claiming this is a thing that I live with. Like my gender dysphoria is really bad. Here are some of the struggles that I go with on a daily basis. And here's why I feel like the current movement doesn't actually represent me. And like everywhere I go to try to find people with like the same condition as I have and like, whatever my local community, like I can't find a single one. And everybody else is spouting all this stuff that like doesn't interest me or doesn't speak to me or speak to my issues at all, doesn't help me at all, may actually kind of hurt, me or whatever the fuck. And like they don't also seem to have like some of the problems that I do. Now, whether or not those people aren't correctly being trans people, the idea here may just be that there's like some distinctions that we need to make between like these different groups of people and then like call into question what level of advocacy we need to be doing for people that exist in those different groups and why.
How do we and they do that without being called like transmed or?
So
You
like
can't-
Well, I think
Buck Angel, for example, that's why I kind of stepped in and said, I think it should be less about how much effort a person takes. I think, I don't think Chud like meant to say this with these implications, but like some of the problems with like Buck Angel's rhetoric is that Buck Angel basically obligates people to take all the steps that Buck Angel had the time and energy and money to make which
Yeah.
may have been all the right decisions for Buck.
To be clear, I wasn't clear when I was speaking about this, but absolutely, there's obviously people that want to make efforts and can't afford to for whatever reason. But my point is, if someone just has got no incongruence to the point where they don't take any action or any steps, and they literally just put she, they, even that is different from someone who wants to transition medically but can't for finance reasons, right?
Can I just say
And
this is a distinction Buck Angel specifically makes whenever he talks about this, and this is why I think Buck Angel calls himself a transsexual, right, rather than just trans. I think he calls himself transsexual to make this distinction.
So there are a lot of things that were said in those emails, and to dismiss them all as just like pick-me's or people trying to suck up or trying to get approval with Destiny is not it's dismissive of everything that was said in there. Multiple of the emails talked about how the reason why they were able to even to engage in this space and feel more comfortable on Twitch and being like a gamer on Twitch is because there was this gamer bro who was fighting against the hostile transphobic narratives at the time. Like, I was one of those people. I actually didn't submit my testimony to Destiny because I just wanted to stay out of the manifesto. But I actually have talked about this before, about how I actually left online gaming for a while because of how toxic things had gotten, especially after like around 2016 or so, 2015, when there was such a concerted effort from the anti-SJW crowd who had started a lot of really hostile transphobic narratives, that as soon as you got clocked as being trans on like voice chat or something in a game, suddenly it was like you were just harassed right off of by everybody there. Even people that you thought were your friends would start ganging up against you. And so to have Destiny suddenly start talking about this stuff in 2017, 2018 was kind of like it opened a pathway for us, and we started, a lot of us were like, hey, this is there's somebody actually fighting against this stuff. He speaks the same language as the gamer crowd that I was in, but he's fighting against these toxic narratives and fighting against the transphobia and standing up for our validity and our visibility. So that was talked about in those emails as well, that he was creating a space for trans people that had been lost. That was there before, but then had been lost.
Do you think that the pendulum maybe has swung too far now then? And these people who, as Supreme said, they're trans because they want to play with gender or whatever other reason. Do you think they're doing like a harm to the people with gender dysphoria?
Well, that is one of the things that came up in a lot of those emails, and that's one of the things I wanted to talk about a little bit here. So for me, those of you who've seen me on panels and stuff, you know that I argue for like very broad definitions of transgender, and I've even argued for xenogenders. But I also am very well aware of the fact that there is a narrative that has effectively been locked down and controlled by the more fringe element of our community that wants to say that if you don't agree with that open-ended definition of transgender, that you're a transphobe. And so one of the things that is coming up frequently in those emails is that they feel like their voice is taken, and that Destiny provides that voice, but they don't really have any other outlets because there's this narrative that if they try to speak up about their trans experience and perspective, that because it's not broad enough to also encompass people who just choose to be trans out of the desire to be and not having dysphoria, or for those who have or are xenogender, etc., if their definition isn't broad enough to also include that they get sort of shouted off of the platform, called a transphobe, called a pick-me assimilationist, and all kinds of other things. And this is something that I've definitely recognized as well, that this narrative effectively is kind of locked down right now. It's controlled by a handful of people who say you have to speak this particular language when talking about the trans experience, or you are invalid and we will chase you out of the space and out of the community. And so we saw that in a lot of those emails. So you're seeing that come out. They're not shitting on trans people. They're saying, look, we're being shat on because our experience is narrower and fits this narrow definition, and we have different goals. we're trying to do things like, afford surgeries and get coverage, get our insurance companies to cover our surgeries, get our states to allow us to do the surgeries. We're trying to get people to a point where they can alleviate certain stressors related to their dysphoria. And so the focus is narrower, and it's much more, it's on these issues that they feel are extremely critical and in many cases even life-threatening. But there's this demand that, oh no, you're trying to be transmed by doing this, and
It
so
seems
you don't belong here.
it seems like so as we talked about before, there seem to be two camps. And to me, it feels like one of these camps is demonstrably hurting the other side. And that side is the side that, in my opinion, is to be protected much more because they're the ones that are experiencing this like high suicide rate and stuff like that.
Yeah,
So
but I feel like oh, sorry. I want to say I feel like
Okay.
I actually agree with both of you, right? And that's I guess maybe you can parse that, but I agree with both of you in the sense that I think I agree with Zonia in terms of I actually have also defended like xenogenders, and I've had debates about like all kinds of like definitions of trans. But I think there's a distinction between like intellectually debating concepts and talking about like well, what makes sense in like the word of like what makes sense. And then there's a distinction between taking online discussions and sort of talking about what is true and what is false and like what makes sense. And then when we have to translate that into real life and talking about real life struggles of like real life people who are trans, I think there needs to be a distinction there for people to sort of grasp and understand, well, these people have real medical needs that need to be taken care of and like real world implications, like talking about trans sports, talking about like all of these things. Like how do we adapt these concepts we talk about online into real life? There's a distinction there. And then to address what you said, DK, I actually agree with you. I actually agree that some of the conversations can be harmful between the groups, but I think the reason why they're harmful isn't because the discussions take place intellectually, necessarily like debates. I think the reason why they become harmful is because of people making them harmful and trying to sort of take these intellectual concepts and then talking about like xenogenders and all these things and trying to transplant those into real life
I don't
in
know.
addition
I don't
to
think.
Well,
I feel like one Destiny brought this up in his manifesto that the one side bringing up like and fighting for the existence of like autism genders and stuff does like such a harm to the optics to the other side. And I mean it's clear
yeah,
that
that's
like
just
we
brought
need
up.
the other side to be a part of it because I mean
I
clearly
think
they're
if you
fucking things
Yeah.
up for
and if you
this side.
recognize that to be true, then you've got to make like a pretty strong case for why you've got to like
Also,
suck so much air up in the room.
also,
well,
we've now identified
autism
that
gender.
DK is a transphobe. So for
Oh,
the
true.
record,
True.
everybody.
I am a
Yeah.
very
transphobe.
true.
Well, yeah,
No,
that's
no, but
confusing.
I
I
think
think that.
I think DK the
Known
distinction there.
anti-autism gender.
Okay.
I think we can intellectually talk about the concept of autism gender, and I think we can do that in a non-harmful way that doesn't harm trans people in real life. I think when these discussions become, oh, if you don't believe in autism gender, then you're a transphobe, and that means you hate all trans people, including like people who want to transition and become
Okay.
like woman or whatever. Like
Yeah.
that's where I think it becomes harmful.
Real quick, does anyone think that we should call people who don't respect autism gender transphobic? Does anyone actually think that on this panel?
No.
No.
Sure,
Well,
why not?
maybe not anybody here, but I don't
Not
think it would be.
Jellicle.
I don't think.
I know.
I
I know
don't think it would be
people
I
would.
don't
uncommon.
care. I'll call them transphobic. I literally don't care.
Sure,
Right,
yeah.
well,
I think
look,
people.
are you saying
I
that
think a
for a
lot of people like
meme, or-
Dr. Jellicle exist, though. Like, if your point was just that nobody actually feels this way and we're fighting a straw man, I don't think that's the
No,
case.
not that we're finding a straw man,
Ah.
but that we can move on to a different topic if we all agree and we're just saying the same thing over and over again.
Yeah,
Fair
no, the one point that I kind of came to jump on and make is that, well, a couple of points. One is that there was a diversity of ideas in there. It wasn't all just one thing, and to dismiss them all as being, sucking up to Steven and all shitting on
Mr. Beard, I
non-binary
think it
people
was, more than anything.
that's just not correct, and that's ignoring the various different perspectives that were given in those 31 emails. So another thing that like I feel is very important, and this is something I try to talk about when I can, is that they're these positions, these perspectives are actually the ones that were given in those emails, the ones that are being argued as being pick me or shitting on non-binary. They're actually the norm in the broader IRL trans community. Those are that's sort of where the basis is for understanding of what the trans experience is. So it's important to recognize that a lot of what is declaring that transphobic or pick me comes from a very niche wing of the community that is here online. And
Well, then, shouldn't it be
it's
easy
pretty
for them to
radical.
find camaraderie among these people if that's the mainstream among trans people? They can go out and find any trans people and they'll agree on.
It's not entirely about finding people.
No,
that
because
wasn't
not.
yeah, go-
Yeah, that isn't always about it. And also, I think
Well,
you
you said they were
probably
trying to find
also
community.
Okay, they said a lot
No.
of things, and there are a lot of factors to consider, Dr. Jellicle. And one of the biggest problems when it comes to discussing this shit is how quick we are to try to boil things down to one or two elements and then explode all our principles based on those one or two elements. And then like decide who's hateful depending on where they fucking end up on that side of the fence, right? Like whether it's on this side of this consideration or that side of this consideration. And one of the like one tool that we have when it comes to understanding like people's lived experiences is a survey or getting like people's personal testimony. And the personal testimony that was delivered was like pretty thorough and pretty thoughtful. It seems like these people have thought about their lives. It doesn't mean you have to accept uncritically everything that they said, but I think it certainly added a lot of nuance to a discussion that I think a lot of people are having in like a ideological echo chamber and like a hyperbaric thought chamber. We're like creating all these examples and we're creating people that don't actually exist, but we're just supposing that they exist and how they're existing or whatever the fuck.
Caricatures.
Yes. So to that extent, like he offered some testimony right through these emails, and I thought it was really valid. And I think they represented like at this point certainly a minority perspective on like the trans whatever the
I think
TQ, if you will.
it's important to give some perspective to people in terms of like what exists and what are the issues of people in real life. I think.
Right.
It's a minority
Well, now you and
perspective in
Zonia are
this
at odds
space.
because Zonia said
in
that's
this
actually
space.
the mainstream opinion, and you're
In
saying
this
actually not many
space.
people are.
Well, I actually disagree with
He
Zonia
didn't
on that.
qualify. He didn't qualify it. It's in this space where you're going to find that fringe element tends to be in. Well, I guess it's
It also
evolving pretty
depends-
rapidly now, but it's a lot of it is in university, but a lot of it is online.
Yeah, I was going to say it also depends on which IRL trans circles you're talking about. But
Well,
even
yeah.
in like university IRL trans circles, like if you start talking to someone, like and like you're both trans or like everyone there is trans, you can like get into these more nuanced discussions. And I think a lot of the people who will clap back about like oh, that's transphobic because you don't accept xenogender or whatever, actually have more nuanced positions than they're acting as if they do, which is interesting.
True.
Well,
And it's only online really where it turns into this attack fest out of nowhere.
But
yeah, and I think that's almost a problem with the tools that we use to deal with things that we don't agree with, rather than necessarily like a problem with like the perspectives of the people.
Yeah,
I feel like the issue becomes what happens in a few years when like transness becomes more normalized, right? So I think if transness becomes normalized in the like broad umbrella term that it's being right now, I think it's inevitable that there's gonna be more of those types of non-binary trans people as were described in the universities of like like cis women who become or like say that they are or present themselves as non-binary but don't really require any like medical attention or don't really require like any kind of stuff. Like, can I just finish the point?
Sorry, I'm so sorry. Go on.
Oh yeah. So as that portion of the trans community grows and sort of the people who are, let's say, assigned male at birth and wanting to transition into being like a woman, and they inevitably want to stealth more, like they want to not be as obvious. That means that inevitably, as time goes on, like the trans communities in these spaces are just going to be more of these like very openly like non-binary or even like cis-presenting like trans people. And I think the issue there is, and maybe that's sort of the point of the emails, is, well, what kind of issues are then being spoken about and addressed, right? Because there are very different needs that people who are like cis-presenting, like a non-binary people, that they have very different needs. Like their most like basic need in like campuses might just be like people respecting like their pronouns, whatever, calling them they them.
Yeah, one of them needs attention and one of them needs medical
No,
intervention.
I'm
I
not.
think that's not.
Well, no, I don't. I think that's a very. I don't like that characterization, right? But like the difference for me is, well, if that's the main issue that's being discussed, and like that's where all, like, if like let's say that there's 1,000 trans people on campus and 900 of them are like non-binary cis-presenting people, then those people are obviously going to lobby to talk about their issues, which might be like in terms of like pronoun usage or whatever. But then there's like the minority, like the 10% who actually need real medical attention and are at very real risk of suicide, and maybe those issues aren't being as addressed or talked about just in virtue of them being a minority in
I
that
think
community.
I think that this is much more of I hate to say it, but I don't hate to say it. I'm proud to say it. It's much more of a spectrum than we're giving it credit for. Like there's a spectrum between someone who's only like gender non-conforming things that they put they at the end of their pronouns
Yeah,
on
I
Twitter.
mean, I think we opened with that.
Obviously.
Yeah. Well, what I'm just saying is that the worry that we get when we create this is that like the people on the border who are like for example,
here's the question.
who may be genuinely attempting to present as non-binary, but because of their assigned gender and maybe the fact that they haven't like gone through any treatments that they want to yet, they present as cis. Anyway, go on. Sorry.
Okay, I have a couple issues. Number one, Dr. Jellicle, give me one reason I should give a fuck about xenogender people.
Well, do you agree that non-binary people exist?
Okay, are xenogenders like they them? Is that a xenogender, or is it non-binary? They like, is that a xenogender?
Well, one's a pronoun and one's a gender. These are separate things.
Okay, are non-binary people xenogender? I thought the xenogender stuff was like I'm fucking cow gender or whatever.
Well, no, it doesn't have to.
They them
Well,
isn't
why did you avoid the question? Do you agree that non-binary people exist?
I don't know, but I think I grew up with one. Sure, yeah, I can accept. I think
non-binary people can have xenogenders. That's right.
Well,
I'm sorry?
No. Sorry, continue, Supreme.
Well, I think maybe first we need a definition of xenogender, like what that entails.
So I think I agree with Dr. Jellicle on this, maybe. So maybe I can answer. So Supreme, I would say that's the way that
How about we just let Dr. Jellicle answer?
Well, it doesn't seem like
no, Daniel likes to hear his own voice, so he can go ahead.
Exactly. Yes, I love hearing my. No, you can go ahead.
You do want to hear from Jellicle, though.
Yeah, give me your definition of xenogender.
Xenogender tend to be people with gender identities that maybe deviate from currently understood gender identities within the binary. So like non-binary is like a umbrella term, just as like trans is an umbrella term. So like xenogender people fall under the non-binary category. So my position is just that, if we acknowledge that non-binary people exist, I don't find it useful or productive to then dictate how they get to express and convey that identity, lest you then start policing people's gender.
I wouldn't be so keen to dictate somebody's identity, but I would be more critical about whether or not this person is co-opting or bandwagoning an issue that we maybe ought to consider completely different. So if somebody,
that's where I agree.
Somebody may be deer gender or something, or they may be like, hey, I just really am happy you're identifying as a deer. That's great. But when we're advocating for like trans rights or something like that, or we're talking about like the bathroom, whatever, if a bathroom bill is going through some local Congress or something like that, I think that's where the deer people need to like butt out probably. Or you've got to make a really strong.
Do you see any deer gender people saying, no, fuck your bathroom bills and your stuff? My issues right now is the most important. Do you see any people who are saying that?
Okay, if you're asking me if there's a significant group of people that would call me transphobic for saying this, I think the answer is yes. For saying that deer people don't share the same issues.
Right, but you have to, Supreme, you have to, let me see if I can help. You have to bridge to Jellicle that division is like preventing more unity and more like.
But it might. That's why I say co-opting or bandwagoning in a way that can detract from the things like the fights that we're actually having to have.
Where's the detraction?
the
That's my
Okay,
question.
the
What is
detraction is that
problem is-
conservatives are looking at dear gender people and thinking that represents the same community
Yes.
as people that suffer like severe gender
the
dysphoria.
issue
I think
is
they're going
that
to do that with
the issue is that people are like, okay, hey, these are trans people, right? The people with dysphoria, and then more people come along and they say, hey, we're trans too, and this, and this, and this, and you have to accept all of that, or you want trans people to die.
Right.
Well, that's
Okay.
where I
Well, we all
kinda
agree
get
on
into.
that.
So then you're saying that, or you want trans people to die. So then they're saying, okay, I guess I do want trans people to die. Fuck you. You don't get to use your assigned bathrooms. You don't get access to HRT.
I mean, yeah,
That's the
that's
position.
what
Okay.
That's the
conservatives do,
conservative
basically.
position, maybe in
There-
the most
No,
extreme
yes.
case. But yeah,
Half
well,
of the political
Oh my
capital in this country,
God.
hang on, Dr. Jellicoe, half the political capital in this country is already reticent to accept like trans rights for people that are suffering like really bad gender dysphoria, right? Like as we understand conventional like trans men and trans women. So yeah, like we're gonna have to work with that. And if we identify that there's a group of people that's in far less need, that's why I said you're going to have to like make a really strong argument. So the suicidality argument is really strong. It seems like conservatives are really amenable to the idea that like, holy shit, the suicide rate for like trans people is really high. But do you think a dear gender person, that 41% statistic applies to like dear gender people? Do you think that that's like the group of people that suicide rate is referring to?
Not specifically, obviously.
Okay. So that's where that argument starts to get established. It's like, okay, we are reducing this like larger group of people under this one umbrella and then advocating for the rights of all the people who fit under that
Yeah.
umbrella. But not everybody who stands under this umbrella can we establish the case to like a lot of the political capital in this country that we need to actually take action on this. Okay, that's the first thing. The second thing about pick-me's, I can't consider that any of the people that wrote those emails to Destiny and that he read aloud could be possibly considered pick-me's, because I feel like in order to be a pick-me, you kind of have to be seen as a traitor to your people and that you're going to like abide by the conventions of greater society that disapproves of you being who you are. In the case of the people who were writing those emails, those are all people that want to do all the same stuff that like trans people, you know, we consider that they want to do, that conservatives don't want them to be able to do. Right. So like in that way, they're not really conforming to any broad societal standards that society otherwise like, you know, disapproves of or anything like that. They still want to do that stuff. They're just trying to make the case that like, I want to do that stuff. This is just my life. I just live here, man. Like all these people that are trying to claim that they have the same experience as me, when like whenever I talk to them, they seem to want to talk about all this other stuff, or they don't seem to have like a lot of the same struggles as me. I don't think that's indicative of a pick me. I think we like maybe there's a different term you want to use there or something.
Yeah. And I think another
Are we
thing that's
pivoting away from the xenogender topic, or are we going back to the pick-me thing?
Do you think that was a pivot?
he was given
I
two.
think
No, I'm not. I'm not saying you were pivoting. I'm saying
You
do you
did
wanna
say
then
I was
branch
pivoting.
off
You
to
just said,
that
"Are we
topic?
pivoting away from that?"
yeah.
I think
What
I
do
don't
you
need
want
to
to
say
pivot
that you're doing a
to?
This
bad
is
faith
the
debate
logical-
tactic and you're
Okay.
pivoting because
Which
you have
you
no
wanna
argument.
address?
I'm saying, are we branching off to that topic? Like, are we going back to that, or do
The
you want to
same
continue
topic.
talking
We
about
haven't
the
changed
xenogender?
topic.
Yeah, this is
Address
the
what you
logical
want to address
Those are
in
two
it.
separate
of his
topics,
argument.
though.
This is the logical extension of his argument that we've got this really broad umbrella where we're trying to advocate for all the uniqueness under that umbrella, but there's a narrow subset under that umbrella who need a lot more attention from when it comes to things like legislation and medical needs and such. And so arguing for that subset is sort of the focus, right?
yeah.
So that's
but-
sort of where he extended this from. But I think it's getting a little kind of like into the weeds of gender and xenogender, as opposed to like what is being argued for here in this manifesto and all these emails and what that trans experience is. And I think what Supreme, correct me if I'm wrong, what you're tying it back to is trying to dismiss that very specific or that narrower viewpoint as just being pick-me's is effectively just dismissing this very important area and subset of the trans umbrella that we have to fight for legislatively and that we have to fight for medically and insurance and all these other very applicable things in order to help alleviate something as harmful as gender dysphoria.
Okay.
Can I disagree on a very specific thing, but still agree with you on the?
Let me just clarify
Of
real
course,
quick.
of course.
I want to make sure that because Zonia asked me to correct where she may be wrong. Okay, and
Yeah.
I got a lot to go through. No, I'm just kidding. Listen, I'm not here to create dogmatic prescriptions for like who we have to, interpret as the right type of trans or not or whatever the fuck, right? Like all I'm saying is that that testimony I think is really valuable, and it touched on a lot of things that I've wondered. I think ChudLogic and I have had discussions on this before, actually, about like xenogender stuff and like neo pronouns and whatnot. And I was just really interested to hear a portion of that population that I don't think has been represented well before. And it gave me a lot to think about. So I just want to make it clear that I'm not here giving everybody these, like, that's one of the things I hate the most about these conversations, is when they we try to boil these topics down into this fucking ideological echo chamber, into one or two considerations, and then create an entire set of one or two moral obligations out of it. And it's just based on, literally in this case, a couple testimony. It gave me a lot to think about. And my original contention, Dr. Jellicle, is that you said that it was all pointless and useless.
Within the context of the manifesto reading, yes, it was.
I guess.
I just think there's a very real difference between a group of people who needs medical attention and a group of people who needs social attention.
Yes,
and those two might overlap. There's an overlap. There's two circles and there's an overlap in the middle. But we have to recognize that there's two far sides, and one only needs social attention and one only needs medical attention.
Yeah, and obviously you're not saying social attention like they just want attention, right? You're saying
social change.
Okay, good. Well, then I agreed with you, and I knew where you were getting. I just didn't want people to. So I think that so technically, I don't think that dismissing the. I don't agree with dismissing the emails as pick-me's, but if you do dismiss the emails as pick-me's, I don't think you're necessarily dismissing that subset of trans people that are more binary trans people or trans people who need medical attention. I think you could just be dismissing the idea that we can't cater to those people and also have this wide umbrella.
Well, it's about how you do it, but I think I can agree that it goes down to having a disagreement about how to achieve the social change that you want. How do you achieve the trans acceptance? And arguably, you can say that. Well, I would say that it's better to try and do it in increments rather than do the go the whole way and get everyone's agenda on board at the same time together under some umbrella.
I also don't know if I'd agree that that non-binary people broadly don't need medical attention.
They do. Yeah, a lot of them.
There's an overlap.
Right. But we're talking about this in terms of 90% of people are xenogender and want to have fun with gender, and 10% of people need medical attention. But I'm a university. I'm supposed to be in the critical, the woke critical mass. I'm in a university, and I know loads of non-binary people. And I can't think of. I can maybe think of a few non-binary people that I know that aren't going for some kind of medical transition, but the proportionality here is way out of whack from my personal experience. But I could just be that's just an anecdote.
At least, I mean, in the university I work with, that they seem to be just fine, just acknowledging whomever the professor or adjunct professor is, along with the students who want to be called what they really want. You end up having some professors that are TERFs that went out of their way in doing that and do get in trouble with that. But I think in certain occasions it really honestly depends on the entire general university's policy on such matters.
So true.
I think there is a big divide between the people who identify as trans and people who identify as their wanted gender, like men and women. But the problem is, I think, those people who want to identify as trans, xenogenders, non-binary people, they want to use those other people as shields. They bring up when they say, you are not real trans. They bring up 41%. Oh, I'm gonna video game myself. Shit like that. That's the frustrating part. I don't think anyone in this panel thinks they are not valid. They are bad people. That's the real problem, I think.
Well, there is a big sort of disagreement. This is kind of something that became a major falling out for a lot of people in this space a year and a half ago, roughly, is that there is there are people in the trans community, particularly in this online commentary space, who feel that there are a lot of so-called trans people who don't suffer from dysphoria, who are effectively appropriating the trans experience to drive priority for their needs. And so they're saying, yeah, like what you were saying, they're saying, they have the high suicidality rates, and that they need their gender validated by other people, otherwise that they're going to suffer from not having it validated, etc. The disagreement that I have is that I can't tell for certain, like, whether or not their experience is a truthful one, and I think it's dangerous for me to doubt their experience. So I'd rather extend to them the charitable, view that they're being honest about their experience and that they do suffer from some of the same things. But the problem is then you kind of get into the territory of dysphoria, and a lot of them claim that they don't have dysphoria, and so it's a little, you get into this incongruence where I can't really, like, I'm sitting there going, well, if the experience is so so strongly eternal and innate to you, and having your experience not reflected back to you by the community, in other words, being, misgendered or not having your gender affirmed, is so painful to you, well, then that kind of fits in the definition of dysphoria, does it not? And so that's where there's this sort of disagreement, because there are a lot of people in the xenogender realm who are basically saying, this is how I feel, but it's not dysphoria, but I have all the same uh, issues that you suffer, and so my gender needs priority, and you need to talk about it, and it needs to be affirmed, and people need to be okay with it.
Well,
Right.
I mean,
So I think that's where the ends up being a disagreement. But we can't know for certain whether or not they actually feel that way. We just
So
see that there's this
what
incongruence between
what's
dysphoria
the
and
need?
non-dysphoria.
What's the need with being called a different pronoun if there's no dysphoria?
well, I mean,
The genuine question.
I can answer. So I think Zonia. So first off, just to address what Zonia said, I think that can be very easily solved by just like working like that question out, right? Like, so if somebody is describing all of the sort of same things that you would experience when you say you have gender dysphoria, but they don't call it that, I think we can still say that person is experiencing gender dysphoria. They just don't use those words to describe it, right? But like
Yeah.
we have a
Or all the same traits of it.
But just
exactly,
to
exactly. So and just to address what DK said real quick, right? DK, I think there's different ways that you can try. So you don't necessarily, well, in my opinion at least, you don't have to have gender dysphoria to be trans. You can just have the opposite. You can have gender euphoria, right? You can just, this makes me feel better, but in general I feel okay. But like, it makes me feel even better if you address me by certain pronouns or address me in certain ways. And I don't think there needs to be dysphoria, but there can be a euphoria. I think it has to be either or both, right? Because there needs to be some kind of need, some kind of want to be addressed in a certain way, and you might not be necessarily aware that you are experiencing dysphoria or euphoria, but I think there needs to be one of those or both.
Yeah, if you don't have, yeah, I was gonna talk about gender euphoria, but if you don't have like gender euphoria or gender dysphoria that's alleviated in a sense of what we could, I think these are very very comparable, because we look at, like, well, is your
Well,
baseline?
They're
Sorry.
okay. They you might be able to find a comparison for them, but right now the struggle is convincing half the country that we should, that they should make trade-offs that they don't want to make, because right now they have fears that like cis women have a fear of, like, there are some cis women, right? We traditionally call them TERF, but I don't think it's necessarily an unreasonable fear. Or at the very least, like, an unreasonable consideration that, like, cis women have an entire history and a biography that trans women don't have. And so, like, the idea that cis women might want, like, a safe space for them to go to the bathroom because it makes them feel safe or something like that, I don't think that's inherently or intrinsically hateful. I think maybe a lot of stuff gets smuggled into their message that ends up, being, like, kind of misunderstanding or something like that. But the whole point is that we're going to have to like convince people that a problem is bad enough that we should expand the definition of woman, for example, to like include these people or something like that. And
Well, I think
like,
that
if you can't make that case very well, or at the very least, like if their case ends up getting made for them by a bunch of people who are like, yeah, I'm a woman because I'm like, 10% happier when I dress, in women's clothes or something like that.
Well, what
But
I'm
I
saying
don't-
is you don't know what they're based like. Okay, for example, someone can think they're okay, but when they like start to express and like start to transition, they're like, wow, I now realize that this like baseline
Sure,
that I
that can
thought
happen.
I was okay,
Sure.
I feel comfortable now.
I also think that
you think of that as a positive experience, but it's actually like the alleviation of a negative experience.
Listen, I don't discount that can happen. Maybe that can happen. I don't know, right? My understanding of this entire situation is that there's a lot that we have to learn about, like gender dysphoria and this like whole like all these phenomena, right? That we fit under the term of like transness and what it is to be trans, or what contributes to you being trans. And I think there's a lot of reduction happening where we're applying a lot of the same qualifiers and like equating them and saying that all the implications are the same. And that's like the thing that we need to watch out for. And to me, those emails did a lot to sort of, I think, untangle that a little bit. Hopefully, if you were listening intently and you weren't just listening through the scorn of you're scored of a content creator, which I assume is probably the case in Dr. Jellicle's case. But listen, here's all I have to say about this manifesto. I think he should not have followed up the rape accusation section with the fucking hate raid section, because that was just like a horrible decrescendo.
Yeah.
How the fuck are you going to follow up? Like, how am I supposed to care about hate raids of Keffels after, rape accusations? That's all. I'm out.
Yeah, you got to kind of end it with the rape accusations one.
I
honestly,
You got to end it on the best bit, haven't you? End it on the best bit.
Wicked supremacists. Okay.
I honestly,
just because we hit
ran
that
away
bit
with
of
the
it.
bitch.
I really wanted to talk about the hate raid thing, but I don't really have the time. I got to go do some things, run some errands, get ready, and do my own stream, which I'll be talking about it over there. So you guys have fun.
Damn.
What's the link?
Someone
Just do a
shout me out.
shout out in the Twitch.
No, we got Chuds to finish.
Well, maybe
yeah.
Chud radio. I don't know. Maybe
I may have tuned out.
I'll be live. I'll be live in about 6 hours or so, something like that. Anyways, you all have a good day. Shout out to chat and Dario. I'll send you that clip.
Thank you.
Bye.
Have a good one.
Shout out to
See you later.
Right.
Obama.
People are getting bored of talking about trans discourse. Let's talk about the manifesto, hate raids. Yeah, what?
That's a really good. That's a really good place for me to.
I thought it
it
was interesting that that he didn't really go too much into the Poppy thing, did he? He brought up how he sort of turned on her, but he didn't really dredge up the entire thing. Which I guess if he was trying to bury Vaush, he might have done.
Well, yeah, I think that's. I think Red Penny. I think that's. I guess that makes sense if you view the manifesto and the way that we discussed it, right, as Destiny mostly defending himself. So I think the only points in the Poppy thing that he specifically addressed and talked a lot about were specifically the allegations made against Destiny in terms of the thing, right? How he was going easy on Vosh, or like how he was going hard on Vosh, or like why he kicked Vosh from the community because he's a leftist, right? So like he was mostly addressing allegations toward Destiny, not allegations towards Vosh, and that was sort of tangential. Does that make sense?
No, it does, and I think it's a point in his favor in terms of there are ways that he could have been more unhinged and more leaned into the whole "I'm obsessed with you, no, you're obsessed with me" sort of thing by just going full biased, trying to bury people.
Apparently, because the thing is, my understanding of when Destiny was speaking about like, oh, he misrepresents me or it doesn't show a tweet, is that I think what he's trying to say is Vosh will say something in containment on that stream and won't bring up the context. But apparently there is a video of Vosh going over the entirety of the tweets. So I just wonder if that's like maybe a bit misrepresentative on Destiny's part.
Sorry, which tweets?
The condom discourse tweets.
Oh, that part of it.
Oh.
Because, someone sent me this link to this video, which apparently is Vosh going over all of the tweets from the discourse originally.
Does he get more sort of, unbiased / objective about it? Or...
I've not watched it, but
I would have to watch the video.
Yeah. but
For-
he's
There's
seems to
too
have them
much
on the
lore
screen
in
at least.
English, to be honest.
I think whilst I agree it's good that he's kind of gone over them. I think that I had this with like Booksmarts, for example. You know, I made a little off the cuff joke about Booksmart's name being maybe something else, and all of a sudden everyone that watches
What
me
was it?
fucking hates
Can
Books.
Can you repeat, Chud? What was it? What did you call
Okay,
it?
I'm not saying it now because I agree with it. I'm just
Come
quoting
on,
myself.
do it. Do
He
it.
said,
Howard.
he
One of us
said,
to say
he said, I said, Book Smarts. No, we're going to call him Book Retard. And then,
Yeah,
and
it
then,
was a fine joke.
and then everyone started calling him that, and I was like, no, I was angry and was memeing. But then people kind of take it a bit further, and then before you know it, a bunch of people in your community fucking hate this person. And I think that's the kind of
That
power
wasn't
you
because
have.
of that, though.
No, sure. It
I
wasn't
get-
just
yeah,
no,
but
it wasn't,
no, I
it wasn't
get
just
your
because
point.
of that. But the point is like the repetition of that leads to a sort of narrative that is bolstered by everything else that happens. So the basic point I'm making is you have got a lot of ability, even if you're looking at someone or looking at someone's content, to really skew the perspective of what your audience think about it. If you're not kind of like, you know, giving it its due sort of credence. So I don't know what this video contains, but you can definitely leave people with a negative perspective if you go super hard on someone's content.
I think, you should give your chat a bit more in terms of, it's not your fault that Booksmarts then did shit that made chat hate him.
True.
And so it was a fine joke in the moment.
So the basic point I'm making is it's good that he's obviously covered the tweets, but then, I've not watched the video. His presentation of it could end up giving a bad impression too. So, I think the best thing with it would probably be for Vosh to respond, so we can give his side, but I don't know if that's going to happen.
Well, he's probably not because he's in the fortress arc right now. Like they're too busy cannibalizing each other in the fortress. Like if you go to like their subreddit and whatnot.
I think entirely.
So right now, as we speak, right, I'm looking at Twitter and I follow. I'm not gonna name any names, but I follow a lot of the people who were mentioned by name in the manifesto. And it seems to me that the response from those people on Twitter, at least, is that they are just like they take this action or like they take the video or whatever of them that was in the manifesto, and they just go, "Oh, I'm living rent free in Destiny's mind." That's their only message, or like cope or something like that. Like, yeah. So I think that's basically going to be the response.
Like who? Name names, Dario.
I'm not gonna name names. I was just scrolling Twitter and I'm seeing literally this response, and it's just like cope. Oh, schizo posting, Destiny schizo posting, rent free, like stuff like that.
I think what was her name? Like Vivian, Miss Vivian Wolfer, whatever. Like she had a response, something along those lines.
Well, of course you did.
Vivian is based.
Can we get like, okay, this is fucking boring. Can we get like Jellicle? What was a problem that you had with the manifesto? So someone who disagreed with something.
Well, my arguments or my disagreements were largely with the trans section. Like I said before, I'm not gonna defend like shitty behavior that Destiny called out in the later half. Like I don't like I'm not gonna like what would I gain from that? Like unless you want me to defend it, I'll defend it if you want. But
you can get that clout, dude.
Yeah,
you can grow your stream.
I have plenty.
This
of
is your
clout
chance
right
to
now
get
that I
in with
don't
kettles.
want.
Become a Hermod as well.
I've put in my stream title,
Don't say no.
haters welcome, Destiny haters come and, say your piece, but I just
Yeah.
don't know. Like if someone was to
I
come on and
mean,
say,
I hate him with his trans takes, and we talked about the trans stuff already at nauseum. I think, unless you want to go back to it, we can.
no,
but
don't talk about it. We've
people
covered
are
that
over
enough.
it. Yeah.
There must be something else.
If
not, we just have to wrap things up, I think, unless there's anyone else who wants to come on and say their
thing.
piece.
I have a thing, Chad. Okay,
Yeah.
I have a thing. Okay. I have a huge pet peeve, and this happened instantly. As soon as we started this conversation, this happened. Right, where people will go on to and talk about people or events, and the first thing that they will say is, "Oh, I obviously don't agree with everything," but then go and talk about things they agree with, right? But like they never specify. Like people in this, like Dan said it, I think Visco's writer said it, where like they open up by saying, Oh, I agree with 99% of the things in the Destiny Manifesto, but I'm sure that if I asked you, well, what is the 1% you disagreed about, then you probably wouldn't be able to give me anything on the top of your head.
Oh
And
yeah,
it just
I
seems
just
like
wanted to. I just wanted to pretend like I have some kind of that I'm not totally
Wanna
Exactly.
go through
that I'm not
each
totally a
part.
cult member,
that's
which
that's
I
what
am.
that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. It's like it seems like you're just either pretending to have disagreement to not sound biased or something. Like, and it happens all the
Dude.
time.
It's the
Oh yeah,
optics thing.
Don't know what I think.
Destiny is
But-
absolutely 100% cult leader, glorious leader.
True.
Right, come on, Dan. You got called out. What you got to say?
Well, I just, like, why do I have to agree with everything that?
No,
in
you
this,
don't. Wait, you don't. You don't. But then tell me what you disagree with specifically.
I
Or-
think there has been specifically the parts where he's talking about his definite suspension, talking about the birth of Twitch politics and whatnot. I think there's a lot of things that he said specifically about into his context of what he thinks is his reasons, like the Great Schism and the Chadwick and all that. I don't think that it really matters to the context of how his whole entire thesis is really made out of in the end.
So what was missing? Can you be specific? Let's talk about that.
I think he has to talk about the major things that happen, such as the great, at least the things that happen with Anita Sarkeesian, the beginning of that kind of discourse, when you specifically talk about online behavior and the changing of that over periods of time. You talk about political polarization through the 2016 election, where his views have ended up changing. All that. If you want, I could go. We could go through all of it. Why you just going around and assume that I don't know specifically what I want to talk about?
Am I going okay? I might be going crazy. I feel like he mentioned Anita by name in the manifesto. Or was that a different video I watched?
No, he mentioned the Sarkeesian.
I think he should have gone more depth into that.
But so what
Why?
was missing? Why? What was missing?
I think missing is the entire context of how it really ended up changing the dynamics of how people end up talking to each other through general discourse and on the internet.
But didn't he
You felt
specifically
the
address
influence
that
of Gamergate was stronger.
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah.
But
I think it should be more
Not every
like,
manifesto has to talk about Gamergate, though.
Well,
It's been
because now we're gonna. Because now I just think you're just trying to do like a dunk or something like that, Dario. I just want all I just want is
True, Darius, stop being such a dunkster.
Yeah,
Cut it
Darius.
I'm
out.
just trying to get someone
Yeah.
to say what they disagree with.
Yeah, okay, listen. Okay. I understand why it comes off like that. Okay, that's just the way I phrase things. Okay, I phrase it to create content. Okay, but there is an actual question there, right? The question is, if you come in and say you agree with 99% of the things in the manifesto, but we only talk about the 99%, then what I'm asking you is, well, tell me about the 1%, so we can have some disagreement, so we can talk about the things you disagree about, right? And I think if you say you have 1% disagreement, then you should be able to articulate that and talk about.
I did.
No, that's fine. I agree. You did. That's fine.
So can you take back your part of me saying that I don't have minor disagreements on the parts that you said?
I'm not sure I said you specifically don't. I'm just saying people in
You
general
get-
don't. Oh, if I
Yeah.
did that, yeah, you were able to articulate something, and now I think we're
Okay.
talking about that.
Good.
Right?
Yeah, that was squashed. Now let's just finally quash this whole thing.
I'm sorry.
Can I,
Take the L,
can I just
Darren.
point out
I took the L.
This-
Cringio.
Demi Sang,
Thank
Demi
you.
Sang.
beautiful man?
Hello.
Kia ora. Hey, mate. How you going?
I'm good. How are you?
Well, I am fantastic. I just want to point out this lovely man in the top right on my screen, who's been the only man who's been ballsy enough to put himself on camera. What
Based.
a fucking boss over here. Fucking
I
good
know,
on you,
You're
mate.
pointing out yourself right now, but anyway.
No, I've been
Just
doing
me.
straight. I've been doing going on panels for a good while so people are familiar with my face.
Yeah, why is no one else coming up?
It's-
Come on.
I'm just here
I'm
to see what's
lying in
going
bed right now. I don't think you want to see that.
Yeah, I'm also lying in bed.
It's
Plus, I haven't
what,
shaved
1:30,
in like a month. Okay.
1 a.m.
bad.
We're waiting for the chance to get people to pay us for our face reveals.
My face reveal's been ruined.
Yeah, I need some Soros.
You'll
bucks
get there.
if I'm gonna-
Hey,
careful,
you'll get there.
come on.
Don't worry, mate. Don't worry, you'll get there. Hey, Dario.
What's up?
Right, come on.
What a
Don't be saying what you got
fine-looking-
for us. Are you
what a
here to
fine-looking man.
shit on? Are you here to shit on Destiny, mate?
Not really. I'm just here to kind of back up this
Oh
lovely
my
man at the
God.
top right. I know. Look, I mean, he's got some harsh takes, of course, but I mean,
you know,
I agree with him, to be completely honest. I think he's completely based, but that's just me.
do you think? I mean, people are saying, you know, Destiny was just trying to show the perspective of trans people. I personally think the reason he put all those emails in was to boost the word count, like an essayist desperately trying to fulfill the criteria.
Yeah.
So he's like, right, okay, I'm at 60,000 words, right? Another trans email, get it in there.
There's like one part of him of saying like, in this specific, I think in the beginning he was talking about this is the amount of page count for a master thesis. This is how much for a PhD thesis. I don't know if he's trying to conclude that his whole entire manifesto is basically his actual one trying to say, well, this is equal to a master thesis, which I don't think even to a perspective of something like that is really reprehensible, because I don't think that entirely this is more of an opinion piece than to something like a scientific
This is autism.
argument.
He wasn't doing enough sources to make it proper. Where was the bibliography? But yeah, I was going to say that I think
he doesn't have a set style of specifically of what of his paper. If you're trying to conclude that this is a actual thesis, like
I mean, I agree. I agree. I think he's trying to act like he's some sort
really
of professor.
Offended that he tried to steal my valor as a grad student by trying to insinuate that this like puff piece trying to suck himself off with some master's thesis. Get real. When he didn't even write
that than your master's thesis, though. Let's be fair.
How many words was his manifesto? We're looking at what, 5,000, 7,000? Did he do like a proper essay or what?
He did
31,000.
31,000.
Yeah, it was insane.
For reference, my thesis is 25,000. So.
Was it also about internet drama? Was yours also about internet drama, or?
Some of it, yeah. But I will say I wrote all of my thesis. I'll say that.
You didn't have to put any emails from trans people in there to boost the word count, man.
I might have to.
He probably did do that, didn't he?
What paper style is it?
Okay, come on, right. Let's get some disagreement here, please. I'm begging you.
What I was going to say is that part of it was I want to say that
he's a racist piece of shit. No one likes him. He is white, so we go against him. Are we happy? Can we fight against that, or?
Well,
no, we need real
people hate Destiny. Why do people hate
I have an honest question then. Do we call him transmed now?
Yeah, he's a transmedicalist.
Well, I mean, I thought transmedicalist was a hardline belief that you must essentially be a transsexual and going through a medical transition in order to be classified as a trans person. I don't know if he believes that, does he?
I don't think.
Did he think that? So there are some transmedicalists who just think that dysphoria is necessary to be trans, and I think he agrees with that, doesn't he? Or am I misremembering what he said in the manifesto?
No, I think part of it was that he wanted to just to make a distinction between the two, which you can argue is itself slightly transmedicalist, but he wasn't saying that non-binary people aren't trans.
What I don't like about these discussions is when we try to get bogged down about like what is trans medicalist and what is not trans medicalist, instead of just talking about like what was said, right? I feel like
then the second question is then, is he transphobic for saying what he was saying, and platforming the views that he did in the email?
No,
probably.
I wouldn't say
why
so.
not?
I don't think he's transphobic. I think he just.
Wait, Jocko, not sure why not. Do you think he is or not, actually?
This feels like a panel looking for a disagreement at this point. I mean, if no one that hates Destiny wants to come in, I mean, I don't know what to do.
People hates Destiny, but he wants to shit.
bring Destiny actually to this conversation.
Listen, you know what the solution to all this is.
Bring
Right?
Vosh into the conversation.
You need.
I want to hear some fancy words.
Chud needs to burn his bridge with Destiny, so Chud's community like turns against Destiny, so then we can have the panel discussion and the blood sports and all that.
No.
Listen, I've got to be honest. I've got to be honest. This has been pointed out in chat as well. Jellicle, I feel like you have really strong takes about Destiny, but then here,
Like what?
well, that you really don't like the guy. I mean, I seem to recall that yesterday. I can't, I haven't got the quotes on hand, but you had a very negative tone and response to the manifesto. But now, when you're on, it's like, well, I thought what the people did was bad. What do you want from me? And I thought, the trans stuff wasn't good. It seems very weak compared to what you were saying yesterday. And I just wonder why that is.
Well, I already said. Well, what? Okay, shut up, Soy Penny. What I said was my biggest disagreements were with the trans section, which we already talked about. But the stuff after that was whatever. I didn't really comment much on any of that. So all of the heat I was bringing yesterday was about his idiotic trans takes. Okay.
So do you agree with Destiny's characterization of Vosh as a dishonest actor who lies about him on stream in order to create a bad impression of him?
Admittedly, I fell asleep for that section, so I didn't see it.
Oh, how convenient. How convenient.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't sleep I haven't slept 2 nights in a row. My sleep schedule is fucked, but I'm sure Destiny lied about it all and mischaracterized Vosh consistently.
Well, I mean, you haven't seen it, so there's not really much. I mean, I'll just say
I would have some disagreements to bring. I'm sorry, I should have come prepared for this, but
I mean, the funny
you were
thing
so
is
desperate.
Dr. Jellicle is embodying literally everything that I hate about them.
Right, let me explain something, okay? I know that there's a lot of discontent, right? Not just, I mean, in my community, people says, oh, DGG is... No, there's some people that don't like fucking Destiny, and some people that are Vosh fans and fucking hate Destiny, right? But I feel like whenever there's an opportunity for people to come on, and literally, you could come on and say whatever you want about Destiny. Someone could come on and just absolutely tear strips out of him. They're never anywhere to be fucking seen. They're never anywhere to be seen to come on these panels. And it's just like, where are you? Where's the energy that I see sometimes of people that are so negative about Destiny? And it seems like people just aren't willing to bring it into voice to actually talk about it. And it's like, that's fine, but it's just so weird to me that people have got this energy when it's fucking tap, tap, tap fingers. But voice, they're like a little fucking mermaid having their voice stolen by Ursula. They got nothing to say.
I'm here to direct. You said that you didn't like his.
Do you feel my voice is being stolen?
I want to hear what his idiotic trans takes were. We're gonna fucking argue about trans shit
Wait,
for another 2
hours. Didn't you leave?
I did, but I heard you say that in chat, so I'm here to direct the conversation.
Oh my God.
What are the idiotic trans takes?
Please.
You feel so strongly about them. You feel so strongly about them that they're idiotic. I want to hear them.
Okay. Let me think. 1 second. Let me think. I know they exist.
Just the fact that you don't.
Surely if only I could think of some.
Listen, if we're really doing this,
he did say that people who use any all pronouns are just looking for attention. I disagree with that. I think that's pretty idiotic to say.
Where was that? Was that in the manifesto anywhere? Or?
No, he tweeted it.
Sounds based to me. Okay.
Is that it?
That's it. His idiotic trans.
I didn't come prepared for this.
What's your problem with
Perfect
that?
silence. It just goes underneath it. Just the
Wait,
silence
Jocko, what's
that
your
follows.
Is that like a horribly offensive, like somebody who has any and all in their pronouns as somebody looking for attention? That's like that's offensive. You gotta come for Destiny's throat for that one. Who's being hurt by that?
Destiny's throat for that one.
Who's being hurt by that? People who identify as everything.
What do you mean identify as everything?
Welcome.
Right, listen, okay, I don't know what Destiny's take on that is exactly, okay? But I will say this, right? You get these people that use any all pronouns. Whatever, do what the fuck you want, right? I saw one tweet, I think it was, and someone was like, if we're any all and you use the same pronoun every time, I notice that. And it's like, bro, what the fuck do you want? Like, you say you don't mind any, but then you complain when only one is used. Well, it's just insane to me.
Put shuffle in your pronouns, okay?
Alt.
Yeah, put any all shuffle. You got to use a different one every time, and then we'll be
I didn't
good to
realize
go.
you said pronouns on random. You said any all.
I'll give you the option. I'll give you the
I-
option to choose, but please use this one specifically. But have any option, but use this one, please.
I'll steelman it. You can be any and you can also be sort of gender fluid in terms of you're deliberately trying on different gender presentations on different days. And then
yeah, but over Twitter, like, I'm not going to know that, you know? I mean, I don't know. I just...
Okay, I even think gender pronouns are trash, and I wish we could move on beyond. I actually wish we could eliminate gendered pronouns from our vocabulary, and I wouldn't use any all, because I understand that the point of a gendered pronoun is to, like, help create some context in the conversation. And so fucking, like, the whole point of a pronoun is to refer to the thing that it's implied. You're omitting something. It's implied that this is the subject that we're talking about. If somebody was talking about me in a conversation and they use two different pronouns to refer to me, that would create confusion in a conversation. It's actually like negative fucking, it's doing the opposite thing that we expect a pronoun to do.
But what
Anyway,
if they're complicated?
Listen.
What
Jellicle,
if you-
so we're making a list here, right? So number one, okay, we're doing an interview here, okay. Number one, you don't. He said that any all pronouns, like, you know, attention seeking. So that's
is idiotic trans takes. Number one. Any
right.
all pronouns
that is
are
idiotic.
looking for attention. Okay.
Number two.
Let's go.
Oh
Did
god.
someone-
Uh-oh. Is there who
All
I think it
know
is?
that I don't like Destiny. Position number 2.
Listen,
All
you've
I
got,
know.
I'm giving you the anti-Destiny platform now, okay? It's here for you. Come on, Dr. Jellicle. I don't want to put you on the spot, but come on, let's go.
I mean, I am a little bit on the spot. I'll admit I was being spicy when I said it, but I do agree with it. I could bring something later when I can, like, maybe find something for you, but no, I can't think of something.
Go look
specific
and let
to talk
Charmhole
about.
ramble for a little bit, and then
Right.
I'm not going to look right now.
My issue is that why would you even make that strong of a statement if you don't have anything, like even like
I know I think this, but
mine.
I don't know why.
Yeah, exactly. That's like everything that I hate about the Twitch space. It's like people come out and they make like a hot take, and then you ask them, "Well, can you justify that?" And they're like, "No, I would have to think about that and write down some stuff." And I would answer
How
like,
about
"But
him
bro,
saying that non-disclosure was tantamount to rape? I disagree with that. I thought that was pretty idiotic.
Tantamount does a lot of work, and it's a strong statement, but I think it's, listen.
Wait, let him say what he disagrees with about it first, please. He always just says, "Oh, I hate this thing," and then he forces you to defend it. What do you actually think is wrong with saying that, Joko? What's wrong with his take on that?
I think it's not tantamount to rape.
Yeah, why?
Okay.
Don't just say, I don't like this. What is wrong? Why don't you think that?
Well, I don't think the onus is on me to say it's not rape.
Well,
Technically.
he made a claim that it's rape.
Tantamount to rape, and
All
you're saying that's idiotic.
He made a claim that it's rape, and then you're saying no. So why? Why no?
Because you're not raping someone by not telling them what genitals you have.
Okay. Do you think that
you're
it can be
What?
Well, hang on. We can talk through this.
Okay, DK, go ahead and cry about
Here,
it.
Dr. Jellicle, I'll use myself, okay? I'll fucking climb on the cross, okay? And make the radical statement in 2022. I'll make the radical statement that a big part of my sexuality is the genitals that a person has. Okay? It's a big part of my sexuality. Really important to me. Okay? Now, if somebody like do you think that it's reasonable to assume that if I'm like flirting with somebody that's representing themselves to be a woman, that like it's reasonable for me to assume that they have a specific set of genitals just based on probability?
You'd hope
Sure.
Okay. So like if somebody's in a condition, do you think it is reasonable for trans people to know that like most people make this reasoned inference?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
Do you think it is reasonable for trans people to know that people make this reasoned inference?
Sure.
Okay. So like I don't understand how we can say that there's like maybe no obligation whatsoever to disclose. If you think, I personally think that like genitals being important, an important part of my sexuality is like pretty common. I don't think this is uncommon. In fact, I think this is like almost universal. I think there are some people that don't give a shit.
Makes sense.
But I think this is true for probably the overwhelming majority of people. We don't need to, this isn't a stretch. We don't need to stretch too far for this, right? I guess let me ask you this. If I told a woman that I have like a 12-inch dick and then we start fooling around and like she takes me home and I take my pants off and I've got baby dick, do you think that that's tantamount to rape?
Micro penis.
Yeah.
No.
You don't think that like all the sexual contact that we had up until that point, like that she engaged with on the premise that I had a 10-inch dick, I was like lying about my genitals the whole time. You don't think that like me misleading her, that she engaged in all that sexual contact before that point, predicated on a belief based on a representation I was making, that was like not unethical for me to do?
I'd
mean
say
when
it's
you
passive
in
rape.
this scenario, are you
That's what I would
explicitly
say.
lying that you had a 12-inch penis?
That depends.
Can you guys
Did
hear
she
me?
go,
Hello?
"Oh,
Can you guys hear
Yeah, we
Charmo?
can
Yeah, we
hear
hear
you,
you.
Charmo, but we're
Oh,
listening
okay,
to
hello.
Jellicle right now.
Just wait a sec,
Yeah,
Charmo.
yeah,
You
no,
get your
Bye,
chance,
Charmo.
okay?
Charmo."
No, go ahead. Go ahead. Sorry. I was just making sure you can hear me. Anyway.
Yeah, we could hear you. Sorry. So no, I don't think that's rape. What are you talking about?
Mhm.
Okay, what if it's a little bit more deceptive? What if I was put on an accent, you know,
It's
be a little
disappointing.
geezer, and I was to pretend that I was Chud Logic, and then I slept with someone? With that?
No, wait, I've got it, okay? What if, okay, I'm a cis man, okay? And I'm propositioning someone, and like, let's, you know, hook up, have sex and stuff, right? I take them home. They think, obviously, I've got a dick and balls, but due to an unfortunate industrial accident, I had the entirety of my dick and balls sheared off in a crazy incident. And I don't tell them that, right? And it's only when I get to the
You're a
bedroom
Ken
they
Babbiel.
realise that. Would
Well,
they? Do you
hold
not
on.
think that's a bit unfair? And it's a bit like I don't know if I'd use
Well, you
tantamount
should
to rape, but it's
stipulate that you guys have had like some sexual contact leading up to that too. Like you guys have kissed a little bit. You guys
You know,
have like put your hands.
yeah.
all over each other.
What if I've sexted and said I'm going to fuck you straight in your pussy, but then I literally can't?
Well, that can't be rape anyway, right? Like,
Supreme, I actually have a question for you in terms of
Mhm.
like what you asked Dr. Jellicle. So let's say that in society we have this idea that if you're a very tall man, and you probably know about this, right? You're a very tall man, you have big shoes, that women will expect you to have big equipment, right? They will expect you to have
just
a
to be
big
clear,
penis.
before we go
Please-
further, just to be
Oh,
clear,
it's
just to go for,
size
hold on, real quick, just to be clear, I personally disagree with Destiny about this as well. The tantamount to rape. I
Yeah,
just want to hear Dr. Jellicle's reasoning.
Okay. Do you want me to
Um,
continue my question, or do you
well,
want to?
Yeah, if you want to.
It's
No,
going to be a
I know-
stupid
I know where this is
question.
going.
Well,
I know where this is going.
not a-
Because they're going to make a reasoned inference that because I have big shoes that I have a big dick, and then we get to the
Exactly.
bedroom and it's not a big dick or
Exactly,
whatever.
exactly,
Is that,
exactly.
does that make everything right? Yeah,
Yeah.
right. So that's the reason that I wouldn't say that about this. However,
Exactly,
I feel like
yeah.
we can reasonably assume that like somebody having different genitals is like, I think, like, you know, more important to somebody than like the dick being big or small or something like that. But
So
that might be rooted in some like homophobia or something like that. Sure.
yeah, I guess I can only talk from my own experience, right? But like I would say that's a very big like aspect for me at least. And like if like but obviously, I mean, putting myself in those shoes, like obviously I would ask, right? Like I would ask and sort of if that's specifically what I'm looking for. I think everything can just be solved by more communication. I think that's in both people's interest, but ultimately I don't think calling it like sexual misconduct or rape or whatever name, I think that's too much. But I think it would be in everybody's
Actually,
interest to
I think we need to look at that tweet again because I think the tweet. Well, hang on. I think the tweet actually said something about if you like told somebody you had a or if the like isn't it if you like falsely represent your genitals? I think
you
that was
lie,
baked into it.
then yeah,
if you lie, I think then that technically could be tantamount to rape.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah, I agree. So if you
So-
lie, I would agree, right? But if it's just like the social expectations, then I don't think you're necessarily. I guess I don't think
cap.
you can necessarily be
This is just cap.
expected to conform to those social.
Wrong.
Well, here's why.
Wrong, sir.
Here's why. If you see a prostitute and you agree to pay something, pay the fee, right? But then you don't pay, is that rape?
Yeah, I think so.
I think so too.
Listen,
if you
this is
paid
all
for
very.
a prostitute for a lovely lady, and you got yourself a man, would that be considered a little bit dodgy, or?
That's the question of the tweet.
I mean, possibly, yeah. I mean, if you know, if you signing the
I'm
contract,
open.
so to speak, if you're signing the contract, so to speak, and it turns out that it's just a very good-looking cross-dresser, say, and then you know they're like just a man, literally a man, yeah, that's going to be a bit shit, isn't it? I guess. But listen, what we need to understand now, what we need now, Charmhole and JP are in here.
Hey, go on.
The people have been waiting for this, okay?
The big
Charmhole and
guns.
JP, the big guns. Charmhole
Yeah.
say something and JP respond.
Hello. Can everybody hear me again? I'm coming in clear.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Hey, Chud,
Fantastic.
can you hear me?
Yes.
What
Hey,
is with
sorry,
this?
I'm
Sounding
just grabbing
beautiful.
some coffee.
Too nice.
I'm going to do that, and then I'll be here to join. Cool?
Okay, no problem. I want
Yeah,
you
I
know
don't-
you need
It's
to
just
you need to
such
respond to
autism.
Charmhole because Charmhole I think has got some stuff to
Well,
say to you. But Charmhole, go on.
okay, so JP and
Okay,
I
well, I
have
won't be
talked quite a bit.
listening, but I'll be back in about 10 minutes. I'm glad to be here. You're all wonderful.
I
Okay,
love you,
let
JP.
Charmhole do his speech to
Love
the
you,
rest
JP.
of us first. Then he's probably got other things he wants to say. Right?
Well, so just for the most part, everything I'm about to say, JP, I know for 100%. We've talked a lot in Spicy Chat. I know everything I'm about to say. He agrees with.
Wait,
So we're-
wait, Charmhole, give me 1 second.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I just need like a clear cut in the audio so that I can cut this part out later.
So